My name is Isabelle Grant. I'm 29, and I live in Bristol, England. If you told me 3 years ago that love could destroy me, I would have laughed. I believed in roses, promises, and forever. But forever ended the moment I found red lipstick on my husband's collar. The same shade I wore the day he proposed. That Valentine's Day, while the world was celebrating love. I was standing in our kitchen, 8 months pregnant, holding the truth that shattered my soul. And that's the night I stopped being the woman he once loved and became the woman he should have feared. Stay till the end, because sometimes revenge isn't loud, it's the silence that burns everything. The clock struck 7 a.m. A faint drizzle brushed against the window, the kind that made mornings feel heavier. I stood by the counter, mixing red velvet batter, his favorite. The smell of cocoa filled the air, soft, warm, comforting. It should have been a happy morning. It was Valentine's Day, after all. But something in the air felt wrong. Ethan, my husband, was unusually distant. He'd spent the last few weeks coming home late, eyes tired, phone face down, always too busy. I told myself it was just work. People in love shouldn't doubt. But deep down, I felt the quiet shift. I tied pink ribbons around the cupcakes and placed them neatly on the counter. A gift for him, a token of love from a wife who believed she was still cherished. When he walked in, his hair damp, his tie crooked, I smiled. "Happy Valentine's Day," I said softly. He smiled back, half-hearted, mechanical. "Morning, Belle." His voice didn't sound like him anymore. It was colder, flatter, rehearsed. We ate breakfast in silence, forks clinking against plates, the hum of the fridge filling the void between us. Then his phone buzzed. He froze. I watched his eyes flicker with panic for a fraction of a second before he turned the screen away. "Just work," he said quickly. But something about that just felt like a lie. When he left for the office, I stood by the window, watching him disappear into the fog. My chest felt tight, like my heart was warning me this day would change everything. Hours passed. I tried to distract myself by folding baby clothes. Tiny onesies in pastel colors. Imagining our daughter. Imagining a future that still felt pure. Then it happened. A message popped up on our shared tablet. His phone was synced to it. A text. From a name I didn't recognize. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Red dress, no lingerie, just the way you like it. Red." My hands trembled. The cupcake I was decorating slipped, smearing red frosting across the counter like spilled blood. For a long time, I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Then I opened their chat. And there it was, weeks of messages, pictures, secrets. He wasn't working late. He was with her. Madeline, a marketing assistant from his office. 23. Single. And she called him my Valentine. I felt my baby kick inside me. Like she, too, could feel my rage. I didn't cry. Tears felt too merciful for what I'd just discovered. Instead, I cleaned the frosting from my hands, walked to the mirror, and stared at the woman looking back. Pale, swollen eyes. A love too big. A heart too broken. And then I whispered, "He thinks he's getting red velvet tonight. He has no idea what's coming." I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or call him to demand the truth. No, I wanted him to believe that I was still the same soft, fragile Isabelle, the one who would forgive, who would cry and crumble. But something inside me had shifted. The Isabelle he betrayed died the moment I read that message. The woman standing in front of the mirror was someone new, quiet, calm, and dangerously patient. That night, I decided I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. I'd let him dig his own grave first. Ethan came home just after 10 p.m., smelling faintly of cologne, not the one I'd gifted him, but something sweeter, floral, and unfamiliar. He kissed my forehead gently. The nerve of him. "You're still awake?" he asked, pretending to be surprised. I smiled softly. Couldn't sleep, the baby's restless. Half-truths are powerful when you're planning revenge. He nodded, guilt flickering for a second in his eyes, but he brushed it away quickly, like a man used to lying. When he went to take a shower, I walked to his coat pocket and found a hotel receipt. The time matched his late office meetings. The room was booked for 2. Under guest name, Madeline Rivers. The red ink from the logo smudged slightly onto my fingers. I stared at it, breathing slowly, memorizing every detail. Pain had turned into clarity, and clarity had turned into purpose. The next morning, I played my part perfectly. Smiled when he left for work. Sent him a message, wishing him luck on his presentation. Even packed him lunch, because guilt feeds on kindness, and I wanted his guilt to rot him from the inside out. Then I made my first move. I called Clara, my closest friend, someone who had always warned me Ethan was too smooth to be sincere. When I told her what I'd found, she didn't speak for a while. Then she said, "Belle, don't act yet. Let's collect everything, make it clean, make it hurt." That sentence stayed with me. Make it hurt. So, we started building a quiet little empire of truth. Every night when Ethan was working late, I followed him, not in person, but through his phone. A small GPS tracker app. He never noticed. He was too busy chasing his lies. Clara helped me record call logs, gather photos, hotel records, even voice notes from their phone conversations. Each file was another nail in his coffin. One night, I followed him for real. Heavy rain, wind cutting through the streets of Bristol, and my heart pounding like thunder. I parked a street away from the Rose Lane Hotel, where they met. From my car window, I saw her, Madeline, in a bright red coat, her laughter sharp enough to slice through the storm. And Ethan, my husband, running toward her with an umbrella, smiling the same smile he used to give me. For a moment, I almost forgot to breathe. They kissed. Right there, under the flickering streetlight. The rain made them look like a scene from a romance film, except this wasn't love. It was betrayal wrapped in perfume and lies. I took a photo, then another, and another. My hands didn't shake anymore. When I returned home, I sat on the floor beside my baby's crib. She kicked again, softly. I rested a hand on my stomach. "Don't worry, my little one," I whispered. "Mommy's not weak anymore." That night, I started writing in a diary, not about my pain, but my plan. Every step, every date, every lie he told. I called it the Red Velvet Journal, because the same love I once baked into his cupcakes would now become the poison that destroyed his perfect world. Days passed, and Valentine's weekend approached again. He had promised a surprise getaway, another lie, obviously. I agreed to go along, acting thrilled, pretending to be the woman still blind in love. Meanwhile, Clara had arranged everything, emails ready to leak, photos timed to post, and copies of evidence sent to his company's ethics board. All that was left was the right moment to break the silence. And that moment would be on Valentine's night. The same day he betrayed me. That evening, while he showered, I stood by the mirror again, wearing a deep red dress that hugged my growing belly. It wasn't for him. It was for closure. For power. When he came out, towel around his neck, he smiled, pretending affection. "You look beautiful," he said. I smiled back. "I know." His eyes flickered with confusion. That was the first crack. And while he got dressed, his phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. "Madeline, can't wait for tonight, love. Room 307, same as always." I let the silence fill the air for a few seconds before turning to him. 307, huh? He froze. The color drained from his face. "Belle, I can explain." I interrupted, my voice calm and cold. "No need, you already have, for weeks." He stared at me, panic rising, realizing too late that the game had flipped. I walked toward the door, picked up my bag, and said quietly, Enjoy your Valentines, Ethan. You'll remember it for the rest of your life. Then I left. Behind me, his world was about to burn. Because by midnight, every truth I'd collected, every message, every photo, every lie, would go public. The house still smelled of red velvet and betrayal. Isabelle hadn't stepped into that kitchen since the day Ethan's lies shattered her world. The pink ribbons she'd tied on the Valentine's cupcakes were still there, dried, faded, and hauntingly perfect. They were like ghosts, frozen in time, mocking her for believing in love. For the next few days, she moved like a shadow. She spoke only when necessary, smiled when forced, and stared at nothing for hours. Everyone thought she was just heartbroken, but deep inside, something darker was growing. Something colder, something powerful. Every time she looked at her reflection, she saw two women staring back, one broken and trembling, and the other one quietly whispering, "Enough, you will rise." She spent nights rewatching old memories, not for nostalgia, but for clues. Hidden glances, delayed replies, half-hearted excuses Ethan used. And then it clicked. This wasn't sudden, it was planned. Ethan's betrayal wasn't an accident. It was a slow, deliberate fall, and she had been blind. Her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "You deserve to know the truth. Meet me tomorrow at Café Auburn, 6 p.m. Her heart froze. Who could it be? For a second, she almost deleted it, but curiosity burned stronger than fear. The meeting. Café Auburn was small and quiet, tucked away on a corner street in Bristol. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air as she entered, wearing her long beige coat and a scarf that hid most of her face. The person waiting for her was a woman, tall, nervous, probably in her late 20s. "Are you Isabelle Grant?" the woman whispered. "Yes," Isabelle replied cautiously. "Who are you?" The woman took a deep breath. "My name's Emily. I'm Ethan's coworker, or at least I was." Isabelle's pulse quickened. "Go on." "I thought you should know Ethan's been seeing someone from work. It's not the first time either. He used company trips as an excuse, and the girl, her name is Rachel Collins. She didn't know about you being pregnant. He lied to both of you." For a moment, everything stopped. The noise, the smell of coffee, the chatter, everything went silent in Isabelle's head. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed calm. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I was like you once," Emily said softly. "He played with my best friend too. She tried to end her life because of him." Tears welled in Isabelle's eyes. She looked away, blinking them back. "I'm not going to die because of him," she whispered. "He is." That night, Isabelle didn't sleep. She opened her laptop and started writing, not a love letter, a plan. Step 1, gather evidence. Step 2, find Rachel. Step 3, make Ethan's world collapse piece by piece. She wasn't impulsive anymore. She was calculating, calm, and terrifyingly focused. The next morning, she smiled for the first time in weeks. Her neighbors thought she was healing, but in truth, Isabelle Grant was becoming someone Ethan had never met before. She watched him from the window like a patient animal watches the tide, knowing when the water will pull back and knowing exactly when the wave will strike. For the next week, Isabelle moved with quiet purpose. She learned to sleep in small, precise bursts, stealing rest between meticulous hours of work. Her days were no longer measured by tea breaks and prenatal yoga. They were measured by files, by timestamps, by the angle of a photo and the metadata hidden inside. Revenge, she discovered, required the same discipline as love once had. She started with what she already had. The receipts, the messages, the hotel bookings. Those were the bones. She needed muscle, proof that could not be shrugged off as passion or a temporary lapse, proof that would twist the knife in the public eye. So she dug deeper. Ethan had a habit. He left traces. Small habits do that, flaws of character revealed in the crumbs you leave when you think no one is looking. He used his work laptop for everything because his office was secure. He used cloud backups because he liked convenience. He was sloppy with phrases in emails, turns of speech that showed up twice in different messages. Isabelle recognized patterns like a detective recognizes the smell of petrol at an arson scene. She followed them. She contacted Rachel, whoever she was in Ethan's orbit. Emily had said the name in the cafe, spoken with a voice that trembled not from fear, but from having seen the future and wanting to warn someone before they stepped into it. Isabelle found Rachel's profile through a breadcrumb Ethan had left, a tagged photo on a company event that Ethan had liked. The picture was of a group smiling on a rooftop, arms around one another, no hint of the private appointments in hotel rooms that followed. Rachel was in the middle, bright and unaware. Ethan's thumbprint was on the tag. Isabelle messaged Rachel from a new account, careful, clinical. She wrote not as a woman wounded, but as someone offering a mirror. "I think you deserve the truth," she typed. "Meet me, no judgment." They met in a park, a place where parents pushed strollers and the world pretended to be simple. Rachel arrived with makeup that couldn't hide the raw edge of shock. She was younger than Isabelle expected, eyes large with the ache of someone betrayed. She said Ethan had told her he was single. He had told her everything she wanted to hear: ambition, charm, future promises. She had believed him. Isabelle stayed calm. She did not hand Rachel evidence or rage. She handed her a printed folder with dates, times, hotel names. "This is the pattern," Isabelle said. "You need to understand you're not the first, and if you stay, you won't be the last." Rachel's hands shook. I thought I was special." "You're not his mistake," Isabelle said, and she meant the words not as cruelty, but as a cold, cleansing truth. "You're one of many pieces of a life he built that he thought he could hide." Rachel left like a ghost. Isabelle watched her go, then turned back to the folder and to the other files waiting on her laptop at home. Emails between Ethan and a vendor that didn't exist. Invoices padded with phantom expenses, small transfers to shell accounts with names that meant nothing until you traced the chain. It was not romantic theft, it was financial. It was greed disguised as duty. That discovery changed the contour of her plan. Betrayal of the heart had become a betrayal of trust, on a scale that would ruin reputations and livelihoods. She compiled everything. Each piece of evidence was labeled, time-stamped, cross-referenced. She created a master file, an atlas of deception. It had screenshots of messages, audio snippets clipped clean, photos with GPS tags, and a financial ledger she had reconstructed from piecing together invoices and bank notices. She encrypted it, backed it up, and then created 3 copies, one on a thumb drive in her bedside drawer. One uploaded to a secure cloud account under a false name, and one sent to an email she scheduled to be delivered 6 days later to a list that would guarantee exposure. Ethan's board, the company's HR director, a popular local journalist known for tearing down polished facades, and a legal firm that specialized in corporate fraud. She did not sleep the night she scheduled the email. She watched the digital clock as if the numbers themselves might betray her. At 02:34, she poured herself a glass of water and let the cold bite the inside of her mouth. Her baby woke and kicked hard enough to bring tears to her eyes. She held the small life inside her and felt the two forces, creation and destruction, mingle into a fierce concentration. She whispered to the belly, "I'll do this for you." The morning after the files were scheduled, she continued her ordinary life like an actress performing a scene she had already rehearsed 1,000 times. She smiled at neighbors, nodded at the postman, sat through the prenatal class and took notes about breathing techniques as if she were fascinated by nothing else. But underneath that thin veil of normality, she was a storm office. Every action had intent. Ethan, for the moment, was oblivious. He tried to patch the world with apologies. He sent flowers that Thursday, cheap lilies that arrived at the door with a note so earnest it sounded like an attempt at forgery. "I love you, I'm sorry, we'll fix it." Isabelle left the flowers in the hallway. She wanted nothing to symbolize the inverse of what she was becoming. Sentiment had been spent, strategy remained. Then something else happened, something she had not planned, and that sharpened the edge of her resolve. Madeline, the woman whose name appeared on the hotel receipt she had found earlier, called. She was trembling on the phone, voice thin. "Isabelle, I didn't know. I thought he loved me." Isabelle had expected anger from Madeline or a hiss of defense. Instead, she heard fear. Madeline said she had also been lied to. Ethan had told her his marriage was failing, that there were problems, that Isabelle was distant. She had believed him because he had a way of making lies feel like the truth. When Madeline said she was scared of losing a comfortable life she had yet to build, Isabelle felt a flicker of old sympathy. But it passed. Madeline was part of the machine. "Get out," Isabelle said. "Leave him. Don't give him the satisfaction of dragging you into something that will ruin you too." She did not mention the ledger or the schedule or the email waiting to detonate like a timed bomb. She could see how fragile Madeline was. She did not want another life ruined by the same man. Madeline promised to leave. Isabelle did not know if she would, but the call proved a useful thing. Ethan's web was wider than she had thought. The exposure would not just pierce one heart. It would rip through a structure built of small lies, favors, and the practiced silence of people who profit from pretense. A week later, as rain turned the street into a watercolor blur, the first fissures became visible. A colleague at Ethan's office, someone Isabelle had anonymously messaged using a carefully forged persona, went to HR with a printed screenshot and a complaint. That complaint triggered a cursory inquiry. The inquiry had a name on it, and the name led to a small team inside finance that began asking quiet questions. Isabelle watched the ripple effects with an odd detachment. She had never wanted to humiliate. She wanted justice, clean, unavoidable, and loud enough that the truth could no longer be bought with apologies and cash. She watched as Ethan's phone started buzzing with messages from work. He answered and lied, and then answered again, his responses becoming shorter, sharper. He began to move like someone who smelled smoke and couldn't find the flame. On a Tuesday morning, the email she had scheduled finally triggered. It was small at first, an internal memo sent to a select address that suddenly found its way into a reporter's inbox. The reporter, who had a nose for collapsing reputations, called. He called fast, with the speed of a predator sensing prey, asking for comment. He asked for evidence. He said there was a pattern here, and if the documents were real, he could blow the story wide open. Isabelle gave him one photograph at first, a simple image of Ethan and Madeline at a hotel rooftop, their faces bright and oblivious. She fed him just enough to set the engine rolling. The article hit at noon with a headline that smelled like vinegar. "Senior manager's double life, allegations surface." The comments erupted. People tagged each other. Rumors congealed into narrative. Ethan called, and for the first time his voice had no veneer left. "She's starting something," he hissed into the phone. "Who are you talking to?" He sounded like a man holding a match near his own hand. "People who have been waiting," Isabelle said. By evening, the company had issued a bland statement. "We're aware of allegations and are investigating." That statement did nothing to mute the whispers. In the office, desks that had been close and conspiratorial now hummed with speculation. Ethan's emails came back undelivered. Meetings were postponed. A sudden HR audit pulled up files and began to look for anomalies. He tried to control the narrative, arranging apologies, scheduling private meetings with supervisors, but it was like trying to staple smoke. At home, neighbors asked polite questions masked as small talk. Friends called and said they were worried. Some offered help. Some offered venom. Isabelle let the conversations pass like clouds. She slept now in slivers and always with one eye half open. The baby kicked as if in rhythm with the news cycle. Each time her phone lit up with a notification, the building shifted a fraction. Then, in the middle of it all, Ethan made a mistake so human and so desperate that it became the lever Isabelle needed. He reached out to someone he thought had influence at the firm, an old university friend who now sat on the board. He asked for help, for an internal pushback against the narrative. He tried to weave the familiar tale. Private mistakes are not public catastrophes. The friend, likely wanting distance, wrote a brief reply that read like a judge passing sentence. "If the allegations are true, we need the files. Send them." Ethan panicked. He emailed Isabelle, pleading, begging, offering to transfer his savings to quit to do anything. His messages had the jagged edges of a man who sees his scaffolding topple. He arrived at the house one evening, eyes bloodshot, voice raw, and held out a small, pathetic paper bag with a single pastry inside, like a peace offering to the woman he had betrayed. He reached for her hand. "Please," he said. "I can fix this. Let me fix it." Isabelle looked at him for a long time. She felt the faint, familiar urge to forgive, the human reflex to repair what we ourselves had a hand in breaking. But she had long since learned the grammar of his lies. She had cataloged the cadence and the pauses. She knew he would promise anything to avoid consequence. "No," she said softly. "You can't, not anymore." He sagged, like a man who had been waiting for a miracle and instead was given a verdict. "What do you want?" he whispered. She had wanted many things. At first it was anger, then exposure, then justice. Now she wanted something purer, a life free from the shadow of his deceit for herself and for her child. "I want you to be honest," she told him. "With them, with everyone. Start with telling the truth to human resources and sign whatever documents it takes. Tell the bank to freeze the accounts you control. If you cooperate, maybe the damage will be smaller." He looked at her as if she had offered mercy. "Will that save me?" "It might limit the damage," Isabelle said, "but it won't erase what you did." He left that night a broken man who had not yet learned the new rule: apologies do not buy back time. The next day, the whispers at his office grew louder. An internal investigation escalated. Investors called. An email she had scheduled weeks earlier, one she'd left like a lit fuse, found its way to the regulator. The market reacted quietly, the way markets do. A tiny nudge here, a lost client there. Ethan's sphere, always confident and smooth, began to catch at the edges like fabric singed by a small, persistent flame. Isabelle watched, not with glee but with a strange, sorrowful clarity. She had not wanted to be a destroyer. She had wanted protection. But protection required consequence. The man who had set her life and their future as collateral had created a problem not just for himself, but for everyone attached to him. Truth, she had discovered, is a communal thing. Once a lie is exposed, it spreads its dust across others who stood on the same stage. As the week closed, the world around them thrummed with small collapses, emails that could not be unsent, meetings that were canceled, friends who took sides. Madeline disappeared from social media. Rachel resigned from her job, citing personal reasons. Ethan's mother, once proud and poised, stopped answering her phone. Isabelle found herself watching the news for the first time in months, not because she was addicted to the headlines, but because she needed to measure the damage. She had planned the blow. She had not known the human echo that would follow. One late night, when the house finally fell silent, Isabelle sat at the kitchen table. She poured tea, no sugar, and took a sip as if testing the water. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she had done. She thought of her daughter, how soon she would meet the world, how small she would be in a world that could be kind or cruel. "I did this for you," Isabelle whispered into the empty room, "so you won't have to learn what silence costs." Her phone buzzed, a message from Clara. "They're asking for comment. Are you ready to go public if they push?" Isabelle looked at the ceiling. She had planned for disclosures, for controlled releases, for measured damage. But the story had taken on a life of its own. That was always the danger when you set a trap. Sometimes the thing you meant to catch brings down more than you expect. She typed one word, "Yes." Then she set the phone face down and closed her eyes. Outside, the city slept under a coat of rain, unaware that a family's life had been rebuilt and raised in the span of days. Inside, a woman who had once equated love with safety sat alone, feeling the hollow, complicated peace that only truth can bring. Rain had a strange way of quieting the city, softening the chaos that usually roared outside Isabelle's window. She sat near the glass, one hand on her belly, watching droplets slide down like tiny timelines, merging, parting, vanishing. 2 weeks had passed since the scandal detonated. Ethan was suspended from his company pending investigation. His friends had vanished, his phone barely rang anymore, and the once proud man now lived in his sister's apartment on the other side of Bristol. The tabloids had their fill: corporate manager caught in double life, pregnant wife exposes husband's secret affairs. Isabelle didn't read them. She didn't need to. The headlines were just echoes of a storm she had already lived through. But now the silence that followed was different. It wasn't peace. It was too quiet. Her plan had worked too perfectly. And perfection, she knew, often hid unfinished truths. That evening, she received a call. An unknown number again. "Mrs. Grant, this is Detective Fraser from the Bristol Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to ask a few questions regarding your husband's case." Her pulse jumped. Financial crimes? I thought it was just internal misconduct." "Ma'am," the detective's tone was patient but firm. "We found some irregularities in accounts that were registered under both your names. We believe there might be more involved than just workplace ethics." She froze. "My name?" "Yes, joint signatures, hidden transactions, things you might not be aware of. Could we schedule a time for you to come down to the station?" Her throat went dry. Ethan hadn't just cheated her heart, he'd used her identity too. That night, Isabelle sat surrounded by documents, bank statements, receipts. She hadn't looked at them in months. She realized now that Ethan had always insisted on handling the boring stuff. Mortgage renewals, credit cards, online accounts, all of it under the banner of convenience. And yet, right there in her name, were transactions she'd never made. Foreign accounts, small amounts scattered across months, like breadcrumbs leading to something darker. She leaned back, whispering to herself, "What else did you take from me, Ethan?" The next morning, she met with Detective Fraser in a gray, windowless room that smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet. He was calm, professional, the kind of man who had seen too many lives fall apart and learned to keep his empathy in a locked drawer. He slid a file across the table. "These are copies of accounts linked to both of you. The transactions suggest someone been moving small sums through shell companies, most likely for tax evasion or laundering. Do you recognize any of these names?" Isabelle skimmed through. None of them rang a bell. Then one caught her eye, AC Holdings Limited. She frowned. "I've seen this name before. Ethan mentioned it once, said it was a side investment." Fraser nodded slowly. "That's the thing. AC Holdings doesn't exist anymore, at least not legally. It was dissolved 2 years ago, but money still moves through it. And those transfers," he tapped a paper, "have your signature." Her stomach twisted. "My signature? That's impossible." Fraser looked at her sympathetically. "Forged, most likely, but we'll need your cooperation to clear you from this. You'll have to testify, and you'll need legal counsel." Isabelle's hand trembled as she signed the witness form. As she left the office, the sky above seemed to mirror her thoughts, heavy, unpredictable, ready to break. The discovery. 2 days later, she went back to her house, the one she hadn't entered since the day Ethan left. Dust had settled like an unwanted guest. On the mantelpiece, a family photo still stood, smiling faces frozen in a lie. She picked it up, stared at Ethan's eyes, and muttered, "You dragged me into hell, and I still protected you." Her phone buzzed again. A message from Emily, the coworker who had first warned her. "You should see this. It's about Ethan, not what you think." Attached was a photo, a scanned document, Ethan's signature, a contract. And beside it, another name, Charles Whitmore, the company's regional director. Isabelle blinked. Charles had been the one who hired Ethan, the one who defended him publicly when the affair story broke. Why would his name be there? She called Emily immediately. "Emily, what is this?" Emily sounded shaken. "I don't know everything, but I overheard something at the office. Charles is protecting Ethan out of loyalty. He's involved. The shell company, AC Holdings, it's partly owned by him." So Ethan was covering for his boss. "Yes," Emily whispered. "And when the story went public, Charles started erasing evidence. But someone at IT recovered files, emails, messages, showing Ethan handled illegal funds for him." The room seemed to tilt. Isabelle gripped the edge of the table. All this time, she thought she'd destroyed Ethan. But in truth, she'd hit the surface of a much bigger monster. That night, Isabelle sat in the dim light, her laptop open again. Her hands shook as she typed. She wasn't writing a plan this time, she was writing a confession, a diary entry, a record of how deep she had fallen without knowing. Dear God, if I ever doubted that evil hides behind charm, I know now. I destroyed my husband to expose betrayal. But I see now, I only broke the mask, not the face behind it. I was a pawn, used to protect someone else's empire. Tears fell, splattering the keyboard. She had fought so hard to reclaim her dignity, only to realize she was still trapped in Ethan's sins. She whispered into the empty room, "I won't go down for what he did, not this time." That night, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. The dark circles under my eyes told stories of sleepless nights, but behind them, a strange calm had settled in. Once I stayed awake for love. Now I stayed awake for revenge. I had made up my mind. Daniel would never forget the day he chose to betray the woman who once prayed for him. The first phase of my plan was silence. I stopped crying, I stopped arguing, and I started moving in ways he could never predict. I returned to my old job, the financial firm I had quit because he wanted a stay-at-home wife. This time, I wasn't working for money. I was working for a purpose. Daniel noticed the change immediately. He'd walk into the kitchen and find me dressed for work, hair tied neatly, no more tears, no more begging. He'd ask, "You're going somewhere?" And I'd reply, "Just back to being me." His confusion grew into unease. He thought I'd break apart after finding out about his affair, but instead, I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece. And that scared him more than my anger ever could. At the office, I was sharper than ever. Every deal, every number, every contact, I gathered information quietly. Because Daniel's company had accounts linked with my firm, and through those, I started to trace his secret transactions. Hidden bank transfers, hotel bookings under fake names, even small jewelry purchases that matched the necklace I saw that woman wearing the night I caught them. Every clue was a knife I stored for later. Weeks turned into months. Daniel's mistress vanished from social media. Rumor said she'd left the country. But I knew the truth, she hadn't left. She was paid to disappear. And the money came from our joint account. That was my breaking point. I didn't scream, I didn't confront him. I simply smiled, made his favorite dinner, and kissed him goodnight. Because the next morning, the real storm would begin. That night, I transferred every piece of evidence, the emails, the bank statements, the photos, to a secured drive. Then I sent an anonymous tip to Daniel's company board members. By morning, the whispers had already begun. And when Daniel arrived at the office, he was greeted not with a handshake, but with an investigation notice. He called me 15 times that day. I didn't answer. That evening, he came home, eyes wild, panic dripping from every breath. "What did you do, Isabelle?" he shouted. I looked at him, calm as ice, and said, "I did what any wife would do when her husband steals her world." He froze. "You're destroying me." "No," I whispered. "You destroyed us long ago. I'm just finishing what you started." He stared at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Because the woman standing before him wasn't the broken wife he betrayed. She was the storm he never saw coming. Morning broke like a courtroom verdict, cold, merciless, final. Daniel didn't wake up to the usual sound of my humming in the kitchen. He woke to silence, the kind that drips guilt onto every thought. When he checked his phone, the screen exploded with notifications. Messages from colleagues, half a dozen missed calls from the company board, and one email that made his heart stop. Internal audit, financial misconduct investigation, immediate suspension. He stumbled out of bed, cursing under his breath. The empire he'd built on lies was cracking, one truth at a time. Downstairs, I sat at the table with a cup of black coffee. I didn't look up when he entered. He tried to read my face, but there was nothing left to read, just calm, practiced emptiness. "Isabelle," he said, voice trembling, "they think I forged the account transfers. Someone set me up." I finally looked at him. Then you know exactly how it feels to be betrayed by someone you trusted. He blinked, realizing the symmetry. My words cut deeper than the investigation ever could. By noon, Daniel's name was trending. News headlines screamed, "Senior executive suspended in financial scandal." Investors panicked. The company's stock dipped overnight. I watched from my office window as reporters gathered outside his building. Every flash of a camera felt like a reflection of the night I had caught him cheating. Only this time, he was the one being exposed. His mistress tried to contact him. He didn't answer. He couldn't, because by now, everyone knew she wasn't just a random woman. She was the project consultant whose contracts he'd manipulated. He lost his job that afternoon, just like that. No goodbye speech, no exit handshake, just an escort from security and a paper box filled with shame. When he came home that night, I was waiting. He looked smaller somehow, like the arrogance had melted away. "You win," he muttered. I shook my head. "No, Daniel, I didn't win. I just stopped losing." He dropped to the couch, hands covering his face. For the first time, I saw real fear, not of punishment, but of truth, because deep down, he knew I'd never forgive him. The next morning, I left early for work. There was no point in staying in that house anymore. It smelled like memories I was ready to burn. That day, I met with my lawyer. The divorce papers were ready. When I signed my name, I felt a strange relief, like exhaling after years of holding my breath. "Do you want him to contest it?" the lawyer asked. "No," I said. "He can keep his lies, I'll keep my peace." Weeks passed. Daniel tried to rebuild his image, but the internet never forgets. Every article, every scandal video, every meme, they all carried his face. His friends vanished. His business partners refused to take his calls. Even his parents, embarrassed by the exposure, stopped defending him. I, on the other hand, flourished. The firm promoted me to senior financial consultant. Reporters reached out for interviews, calling me the woman who rose from betrayal. I never spoke publicly about Daniel. I didn't need to. Silence had become my loudest statement. But behind that calm, I still had moments of ache. At night, when the city lights flickered outside my new apartment, I'd think of the baby we'd lost, the tiny heartbeat that had once united us. That grief was the only part of Daniel I couldn't destroy. One rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. I knew it was him before I even looked. Daniel stood drenched, eyes hollow. He wasn't the same man anymore. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a haunting kind of regret. "I lost everything, Isabelle," he said softly. "You took it all." I shook my head. "No, Daniel, you handed it to me when you chose her." He stepped closer, voice cracking. "I can't sleep. Every night I see your face, I see what I did. Please tell me how to live with it." I looked at him for a long time. "You don't," I said. "You change or you drown." He nodded slowly, tears mixing with the rain. Then he turned away and walked down the corridor, disappearing into the storm. That was the last time I saw him. Months later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, there was a letter. "I sold the house. The money's in your account. I'm leaving the city. Thank you for showing me what love should have been. Daniel." I read it twice, heart oddly steady. Not joy, not sadness, just closure. That evening, I drove to the sea. The waves roared like applause for a war finally ended. I stood barefoot at the edge, the wind tearing through my hair, and whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel." The tide came in, washing over my feet, cold, clean, forgiving. For the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt reborn. The city looked different now, or maybe it was me. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in Daniel's shadow or hiding my pain behind polite smiles. I had a new apartment, smaller but alive, with plants by the window and sunlight that kissed the walls in the morning. Every day started the same. Black coffee, quiet music, a moment of silence to thank God for survival. Then I'd walk to the office, a calm face in the crowd, no longer the woman people whispered about. They didn't see a betrayed wife anymore, they saw strength. But strength has a sound. It's not loud. It's the silence between breaths when you realize you've rebuilt yourself from dust. Life began to return to rhythm. Until one afternoon, it didn't. I was leaving work when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello," I answered casually. A pause, Then a familiar voice, hesitant, broken. "Isabelle, it's me, Clara." My heart stopped. Clara, Daniel's sister. I hadn't heard her voice since the scandal. "I know you probably hate me," she continued quickly. "I didn't call for him. It's about something else. I think you should know Daniel's gone missing." For a second, everything went quiet, the cars, the city, even my heartbeat. "What do you mean missing?" I whispered. "He left the city months ago," Clara said. "But yesterday, the police found his car near the cliffs, doors open, keys inside, but no sign of him." I didn't speak. Could this be another one of Daniel's manipulations? Or had his guilt finally swallowed him whole? "I thought you should know," she said softly. "You were the last person he ever mentioned." When the call ended, I stood frozen, the sound of the city blurring around me. Was this closure or punishment? That night, sleep refused to come. I kept replaying the last time I'd seen him, the rain, the apology, the quiet pain in his eyes. He said he couldn't live with it. Had he meant it literally? The next morning, I drove to the cliffs. The police tape fluttered in the wind like yellow ghosts. I walked to the edge where the ocean crashed violently below. "He used to bring me here," I murmured. This was his escape when life felt heavy. I looked down. The waves devoured everything, even memory. And yet, something inside me refused to believe he was gone. Days turned into weeks. News headlines shifted to newer scandals. Daniel's story faded like an old wound that still itched sometimes, but didn't bleed anymore. I focused on work, on life, on becoming something beyond a survivor. But then one evening, as I was organizing files at the firm, I came across a client name that made my hand freeze. Harper and Associates, offshore consultancy. The same firm Daniel had used to hide his secret accounts. And right under it, a recent signature, Daniel Grant. My breath caught. Was he alive? Was this another illusion, or had he staged everything to disappear? I opened the file, scanning the documents. The handwriting was unmistakable. Daniel. I sat back, heart pounding. He hadn't vanished. He had reinvented himself. And this time, he was hiding in plain sight. For a moment, anger returned, sharp and familiar. But then something unexpected replaced it. A calm, icy smile. He thought he could disappear from guilt. But he had forgotten. I had learned from the best liar of them all. This wasn't over. The days after my discovery were wrapped in silence, not the comforting kind, but the heavy kind that presses against your chest and makes every heartbeat feel like punishment. Adrian and I still lived under the same roof, but between us stretched a distance that no words could bridge. His eyes carried guilt, yet I couldn't tell if it was for cheating or for being caught. Harper called me every night. She begged me to move out to start fresh. "You don't deserve this, Isabelle," she said. "You gave him everything." But I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Something in me needed closure, the truth, the whole truth, before I could walk away. It was past midnight when I heard the front door open. Adrian's car was gone. My heart raced. For a moment, I thought he'd gone back to her. I grabbed my coat and followed, quietly, letting the night hide my footsteps. He wasn't at a hotel or that cafe where I'd once seen them. I found him standing alone in the park, near the bench where we'd had our first date. The cold wind swirled around him as he stared at a small photo frame in his hands. He looked broken. I couldn't hear what he said, but I could see him whispering through tears. "I ruined everything." For a second, pity touched my heart. Then I remembered what he'd done, and the feeling vanished like smoke. The next morning, a message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. "You don't know the full story. Meet me at Café Luna, noon." It was signed with just a single letter, E. At noon, I walked into the cafe, my hands trembling but my face calm. In the corner sat a young woman, brown hair, nervous eyes, fragile hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She looked up as I approached. "Isabelle," she asked softly. "Yes, you must be Emily." She nodded, her voice shaking. I didn't know he was married. He told me you were separated. I stared at her, my pulse loud in my ears. He said your baby wasn't his, she whispered. The words sliced through me like a knife. What did you just say? Emily looked terrified now. When I found out the truth that you were still together, that you were pregnant, I ended things. But he wouldn't let me go. He said he was trapped. The cafe spun for a moment, the noise around us fading into a dull hum. Then she pulled a small USB drive from her bag and slid it across the table. I recorded everything, she said quietly. The lies, the calls, the night he begged me not to expose him. You deserve to know. That night when Adrian came home, I told him I wanted to talk. His eyes brightened with a desperate kind of hope. Maybe he thought I was going to forgive him. I pressed play. His voice filled the room. She's hormonal, Emily. She's not herself. The baby, it's complicated. Emily's voice trembled in response. But she's your wife. Not for long, he said. You don't understand. She doesn't even trust me anymore. Then came Emily's cry. Adrian, I can't do this. You're lying to both of us. The recording ended. Silence followed, heavier than thunder. Adrian fell to his knees. Isabelle, please. I was scared. I made a mistake. Scared of what? I asked sharply. Of becoming a father, of loving someone who trusted you with everything. Tears streamed down his face, but I felt nothing. You broke something that can't be fixed, I said quietly. When he tried to touch me, I stepped back. Don't. That night, I packed. Not just my clothes, I packed away the memories, the laughter, the wedding vows, all the pieces of a love I once thought was unbreakable. Months passed. I moved to a small apartment near the sea. Harper helped me decorate. Every morning, I walked along the shore with my baby girl in her stroller, the wind brushing my hair. The sound of waves slowly replaced the echoes of heartbreak. One day, I got a final message from Emily. He tried to contact me again. I blocked him. I hope you find peace, Isabelle. And for the first time in months, I smiled. But the past rarely fades quietly. One afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Adrian standing there. He looked thinner, older. I just wanted to see her, he said, his eyes fixed on our daughter. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He walked in slowly, his steps heavy. When he reached her crib, he knelt and stared at her. She looks like you, he whispered. You don't get to say that, I told him coldly. He nodded. I know, I've lost everything because of what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see her once before I leave. I'm moving abroad. I need to start over. His voice cracked. Take care of her, take care of yourself. Goodbye, Adrian, I said. He looked at me one last time, smiled faintly, and walked out. That was the last time I saw him. Years passed. My daughter grew up, her laughter bright and fearless. Every question she asked about her father was like a soft echo of the past. I told her the truth gently, that people make mistakes and sometimes love isn't enough. Because I wanted her to learn what I finally did. Pain can destroy you, but it can also make you stronger. One morning, we walked along the beach as the sunrise painted the sky gold. She looked up at me and asked, Mom, are you happy? I smiled, eyes glistening with both memory and peace. Yes, darling, I finally am. I used to think revenge was about making someone suffer. But real revenge is healing when they thought you couldn't. It's standing tall in the ruins they left behind and whispering to yourself, I survived. Every Valentine's Day, I no longer think of betrayal. I think of rebirth. The day that once shattered me became the day I found myself again. Because love didn't end that night. It just changed form into strength, into freedom, into me. The sea had become my confessional. Every morning, I walked with my daughter, Emma, along the same shoreline where I had once wept for the life I'd lost. The wind carried her laughter now, not my sorrow. 4 years had passed since Adrian's last visit. 4 years since I told him goodbye, and for the most part, peace had found its place beside me. I worked as a counselor at a women's support center now, helping others escape the same kind of pain I once thought I couldn't survive. Each story I heard was a mirror of my past, but it no longer broke me. It strengthened me. Until that morning. A letter arrived, handwritten, the paper old and creased. There was no name on the envelope, just one word written in blue ink, for Isabelle. Inside, a short note. You deserve the truth. There's something about Adrian you never knew. Meet me the Cliff House, Saturday at dusk. For a moment, I just stared at it. The Cliff House, that was the place where Adrian had proposed to me, overlooking the endless water. The irony burned. I told myself not to go. I had moved on. I had a child to protect. But some truths don't stop knocking. They claw their way back until you open the door. Saturday came. I left Emma with Harper, telling her I was going for a short drive. The sky was heavy with clouds, the air sharp with salt. When I reached the old Cliff House, its windows were cracked and ivy had started to reclaim the walls. Inside, the smell of rain and dust filled the air. A single candle flickered on the table. And there, sitting across from it, was a man I never expected to see again. Adrian. He looked like a ghost of himself, thinner, his eyes hollow, his hands trembling slightly. Isabelle, he whispered, his voice rasping like sandpaper. For a long moment, I said nothing. You shouldn't be here. I know, he said, but I had to see you, to tell you something before I go for good. My heartbeat thudded painfully. You already told every lie I needed to hear years ago. He shook his head. Not this one's not a lie. He slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a photograph. A young boy, maybe 7 years old, with dark eyes and brown curls. His name is Noah, Adrian said quietly. I felt the air leave my lungs. Yours. He nodded slowly. He was born before Emma. I didn't know about him until after everything. Emily never told me. Shock turned to anger, then confusion. Why are you telling me this now? Because he's sick, Adrian said, his voice breaking. Leukemia. The doctor said he might need a sibling match or a half-sibling. Emma might be his only chance. I froze. My mind screamed no, not after everything he'd done. Not after years of rebuilding my life from the ashes of his betrayal. You think I'll let you drag my daughter into your chaos again? I snapped. He shook his head desperately. I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for him. He's innocent. He doesn't even know I exist. Tears welled in his eyes. I ruined everything with you. I know that. But please, don't let my sins punish a child. For a moment, the only sound was the ocean crashing below. I wanted to scream, to walk away, but my heart, that same foolish, breaking heart, trembled at the thought of a sick child suffering. I'll think about it, I whispered, then turned and left before the tears could fall. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by Emma's bed, watching her breathe. Her tiny fingers curled around her blanket the same way she used to hold my finger as a baby. She was everything pure in a world that had betrayed me. Could I let her be part of this? Could I risk reopening wounds that had barely healed? Harper came over the next day. I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, You've already beaten your past, Isabelle. Don't let guilt pull you back. But maybe doing the right thing this time will finally set you free. Her words stayed with me. 2 weeks later, we met Adrian and the doctors. Emma was too young to understand much. I told her we were helping another little kid feel better. She smiled and said, like sharing crayons. The test results came in 3 days later. Emma was a perfect match. Adrian cried when he heard. I didn't. I was too numb to feel relief. During the procedure, I sat beside Emma, holding her hand, whispering prayers. When it was over, she looked up at me sleepily and said, Mommy, did I do good? I kissed her forehead. You did perfect, baby. Afterward, I walked into the hospital garden to clear my head. Adrian was sitting on a bench, staring at the sky. You saved him, he said softly. You both did. I turned to leave. I didn't do it for you. I know, he said, voice trembling, but thank you anyway. He handed me another letter sealed. When the time is right, read this. You'll understand everything. I took it without replying and walked away. That night back home, I placed the letter in my drawer. I wasn't ready, not yet. But something deep down told me, Whatever it contained, it wasn't over. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. I sat at my kitchen table, the envelope from Adrian unopened, yet my mind raced through every memory, the betrayals, the lies, the years of rebuilding myself. I could hear Emma breathing softly in the next room, unaware of the storm of emotions swirling around me. Finally, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single letter, written in Adrian's unmistakable handwriting. I unfolded it slowly, bracing myself. Isabelle, if you are reading this, I have no more excuses. There is something you must know, something I should have told you long ago. You are stronger than I ever imagined, and that strength has saved lives, including Noah's. But there is one more truth, a truth that will either break you or set you free. I am not Emma's biological father. I never was. Emma is the daughter of the woman I betrayed, yes, but she is yours entirely. I never lied about loving her. But Noah, he carries my blood, and I had no choice but to disappear to protect him. I hope one day you will understand. My hands shook as I reread it. My chest tightened. For a moment, I felt every betrayal anew, the humiliation, the heartbreak, yet beneath it, something else stirred. Clarity. Adrian's disappearance, the hidden child, the lies, they had been pieces of a puzzle I wasn't meant to see yet. I had survived him once, and I could survive this too. The next morning, I drove to the hospital to check on Emma and Noah. She was asleep, her small face peaceful, oblivious to the world's complexities. Noah, frail but smiling, clutched my hand. In that instant, everything felt heavy and light all at once. The weight of the past pressed on me, but the warmth of new life seeped into my bones. Later, Harper met me outside the hospital. She handed me a cup of coffee and said softly, "You did it. You didn't just survive, you became unstoppable." I nodded, unable to speak. Words felt trivial. Actions, love, strength, courage were the only currency now. Weeks passed. Noah's health stabilized, and for the first time in years, the horizon felt endless. Adrian stayed away, honoring the boundaries I had set. I focused entirely on Emma, on building a life of honesty, safety, and joy. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she whispered, "Mommy, will Noah be happy now?" I kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby, because you and I are going to make sure of it." In the solitude of my apartment, I finally read Adrian's second note. It revealed the lengths he had gone to protect both children from the fallout of his mistakes, the financial chaos he had left behind, and the truth about the life he had built for Noah, one that I had unknowingly saved by agreeing to help. It was a bitter truth wrapped in a bittersweet gift. Adrian had been a villain, but also a man trapped by his own cowardice and love. And in the end, I had chosen to rise above the pain, choosing humanity over vengeance. The months that followed were quiet but profound. I established a scholarship in Emma's name for children battling illness. I continued counseling at the Women's Support Center. Each day, I watched Emma grow, each laugh and hug a testament to resilience. Yet one night, as I watched the waves crash under the moonlight, I felt a subtle presence behind me. A voice, soft and unfamiliar, whispered my name. I turned. A man stood there, tall, familiar yet changed Daniel. Not Adrian, not the man from the past. Daniel, alive, standing at the edge of my world once more. "Isabelle," he said, voice trembling with guilt and awe. "I never should have left. I've watched from afar and I see what you've built. You became more than I ever imagined." My heart beat wildly, not from fear, but from the realization that the past could still reach me. "Why are you here?" I asked, steady but cautious. "To finally let you know the truth about me," he said. "I'm done hiding. I've atoned as best as a man like me can. I'm here to say goodbye properly this time, and to tell you everything I did out of fear, but also I loved you in my broken, terrible way." I looked at him, the man who had once shattered me, now standing small and human. Anger, grief, and pity collided inside me. "You should leave," I said firmly. "You have nothing left to give me except reminders of what I survived." He nodded, understanding. "I just wanted you to see that I recognize my wrongs, that's all." As he walked away, I realized something profound. Peace wasn't about him. It wasn't about revenge or closure from anyone else. Peace was my own choice, my story, my daughter's life. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Emma stirred beside me. I wrapped her in my arms and whispered a prayer of gratitude for life, for love, for the strength to survive. The waves outside shimmered in the morning light, and I walked to the beach. I let the sand cover my feet, the cold water lap at my ankles. I whispered to the horizon. I survived. I chose love. I chose life. I chose me. For the first time in my life, I truly meant it. And as the sun rose higher, painting the sky with gold and pink, I knew the storm had passed. The betrayals, the lies, the heartbreaks, they were chapters now closed. A new life awaited, stronger, freer, and untouchable. I looked at Emma playing in the sand, Noah nearby, smiling for the first time in months. My heart swelled. The past had taught me a hard lesson. Nothing, not betrayal, not heartbreak, could steal the woman I had become. And with that, I stepped fully into the light, leaving shadows behind. Because some endings are not about revenge. They are about rising, about healing, and about finding the courage to live fully, no matter the scars. I held Emma's hand tightly as the tide washed over our feet, and I whispered to myself, "This is the life I fought for, and I will never let it go."